All right. Hello, everybody. This is Nephew's SIG Automation for Thursday, October 5th. Let me share the agenda.
Hey, Gagli. Thanks for joining. This is Bala. Welcome. Welcome to Nepheo.
Hi. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So Joseph, want to take over? Actually, I'll stop sharing because you're going to share, right? But here's the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about the some of the CRD changes, and then I guess Carol's going to talk about this. Okay.
We should probably no longer than probably 6:30. Otherwise, we'll never get to the topics. Maybe, right? Hopefully, we'll done by then, but maybe not.
Okay. You're saying, okay, so let's cut. You're saying the first bullet item we need to cut off at the half-hour mark, otherwise we will run out of time for the other things.
I think we will. Yeah, we will not have time for the other two. I think maybe let's try to do some time control, maybe, because otherwise we might not have. Okay. Joseph, take it away.
For Joseph.
Yeah. So share my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, is it
okay.
possible to take the online version, Joseph? Because I did some remarks on it, by the way.
Yeah.
But okay, I just continue. I will don't lose that.
Yeah, this is the one. So basically, the background is I think we wanted to see how to provide NF configurations. An example was 3GPP parameters and how to provide these NF configuration. If there are common configurations across multiple NFs, how do we provide them and provide it to the workloads that are deployed in different clusters. So that's the background, and I think everybody would know about this existing mechanism of how dependencies work. It is not used currently for sharing the NF configurations, but used for kind of getting IP addresses of other
Joseph,
NF
are you on the next slide? I don't see the next slide.
Is it?
You should move. You should move the slide too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just to clarify, maybe that thing is we added a capability in R1, right? That we can fetch the UPF config and add it to the SMF to get all the parameters from it. I think the difference between the two approaches is that the UPF is you could say it's a runtime, so these parameters are not known, so they are runtimes. Here we are discussing what I call static parameters. So it's basically things that we know ahead of time. They don't mutate or whatsoever. They just are a vehicle to provide information that we need to distribute to provide information. So that's a difference. I'm not saying that we cannot use the same mechanism as we have, but there is a difference there, is that for the dependency one, we could not do something. We had to wait till the runtime was finished before we could fetch them, right? Here, the information is known ahead of time. It's known from the beginning. Sorry.
So we want to specify it once and then share it across many instances. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's one important point, and I think whether we mutate, I mean, depends on the configuration actually. Maybe, for example, tracking area code, I think it depends on, for example, where it is getting deployed also. So you might need in one location. So that location-based change of tracking area codes also might be required. So we will have to segregate these parameters based on different requirements. There might be constant ones, like PLMN may not change per location, or it depends on the operator's requirements. So we'll have to decide, based on those parameters and segregate them, how it is getting used. So here, what I'm trying to do,
your slides still haven't advanced. I don't know if that's.
Okay, so Now
Are you? Yeah,
I
Stephen
can
has
stop
had
sharing
problems.
it,
Yeah,
share
where
it
like
again.
yeah, it doesn't work. So the just on your last comment, so right, the part of the idea with the injection, and if you look in the next version that we're going to have for that, the idea is to support some of this functionality, right, where you can inject something directly from the PV resource, and you can specify it in there. You can inject something that's common across all the platforms from the cluster, or of course you can use the current mechanism, which allows you to, with package variant set, to alter the name and inject a different thing per region or something based on that. But anyway, go ahead with your thing. So we're trying to build out the primitives. We have some to do that, but we're trying to build them out to be more
Okay.
flexible.
Okay, sure. Yeah, okay. So here, I think one difference I would say is the common configurations can be created in general by maybe the operator, and then the individual deployment packages can be done separately, and they just mention what they require, like in terms of configuration parameters, and then it just pulls in those required configuration into the workload. That's what.
I'm sorry,
I
can you
was
make this bigger? It's really tiny.
Yeah.
This is the mechanism I think we have right now, John, right?
Okay.
Right. So this is the mechanism that we have right now. So I just trying to extend it because for R2, I was thinking we have less time and maybe we can reuse some of the existing functionality and see how it's useful. Now you are able to see the slide changing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's working now. Yeah.
Yeah. So the easiest approach, I just mentioned it as approach one, where you just whatever configuration that we need, we just create a new CRD and add it as part of the package, so it gets applied into the workload cluster. So this is the direct way of doing it. The other way is some variation of this is, I mean, if you don't want a CRD to be created for each and every different configurations that you take, we have this config kind already, right, which has a raw input which we can give any kind of input into that. So and the controller knows what it is, and then you can use it. So based on what kind, we can give a custom kind information in that, and use it within the controller code. So there's no really CRD created specifically for different configurations, but
which is I think is kind of a meta. So Joseph, I think you should explain. It's a meta CRD. So we did that. So when we injected the UPF in the SMF,
correct.
One of the issues that we had was if we applied it straight to the workload cluster, it could conflict with the UPF. So what we did is we embedded it into a meta CRD, right? So it's encapsulated. Right. So that's. But so at the end of the day, you still apply it. That CRD we still have to create, in my view, but you encapsulate it in something. So the cluster doesn't need to know it, but the workload cluster needs to know it, right? So it's basically a meta. It's a meta CRD to apps. So yeah,
correct. Yeah. So that's the and of course we manually create this parameter refs into the final deployment YAMLs to say that these are the
Joseph, sorry, there is a raised hand. So
yes.
Okay.
UCM35, whoever, I don't know who's that.
It's Fish, I think. It's Fish, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's
I need to change that. Sorry. So just for some of us who are, for better context, if and when possible, not right away, if there can be an example of some configs that you are able to actually also show some examples, right? For me, the only thing that I'm familiar in the past is having played with FI's, VNFs, the big IP thing. And when we're doing configuration on OpenStack, there was the day zero configuration we did, like going off, setting time, creating a bunch of users and stuff like that. And then there was a day zero plus configurations, actual network function configuration, for which we need to be, you could use some REST API I don't know, we have Ravi here who understands big IP better, that you can actually use a
I
command.
come from the distributed cloud.
Okay.
It's big IP is a different business.
But so we at the moment we are still discussing day zero config, right? So config that we need during install time. So all of this is within the day zero, I call it.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So if the demarcation, with an example can be done, some of us will understand better than the actual network function vendor. Some of you are actually, like Samsung is a vendor, and I'm sure Nokia also. It'll be great.
But Vish, think of this, right? We need a parameter. Let's say a 5G parameter, and we need to have it, for example, in the radio, but also in the AMF and the SMF, right? That's what we are talking about. What the parameter is at the moment is not relevant in the discussion yet. What we want to discuss is how do we ensure that that parameter, that we don't have to copy paste all of this in each of the packages. I mean, we could do that, right? Or what is the best way to, as an architecture framework, to provide a mechanism that you have this resource once and that you're able to consume it at various places. I think that's in a nutshell what we are trying to do. What the parameter is about at this stage doesn't really matter.
Okay. Okay.
Right? But we can get into the parameter specifics going forward, but I think we first need to discuss the framework or the mechanism that we want to use. Yeah. Okay, more people.
Yeah. So what happened to the idea of injecting configuration, right, from a higher level? So you know, those, for example, the radio parameter you're mentioning doesn't happen. It's not part of the network, the function package. It's more of the network service package, right? A higher level assemblage of all of it. So I know with package variants right now, we do allow for injection. Is that?
It's one of the options. I mean, for me, I also believe the binding thing that John has spec'd, right, in my view, is a very good candidate for this. Yeah, it's a very good candidate. But that's basically what you have. So it's kind of, you inject it dynamically into the package. I think John was alluding to that as well before, I think.
Okay.
So at the moment, I think there are some restrictions. Sorry, there are some restrictions, I think, at this stage. So if we make them more flexible, we probably, I believe it's a good solution for this.
Yeah, I think, Tal, there's two aspects here. There's the injection process, which is externally like that driven, like say, by a service pack. That's a great example. I think this, as I understand it here, we're talking that would still be a mechanism for how we get the information into the packages, but there are cases. I'm not sure. I guess let's follow along. But my understanding is this is more about the parameter refs, which is more about like how we tie vendor specific or sort of opaque sets of configuration back to individual clusters. And we might use that injection mechanism. I don't think I think they're complementary. Is that right, Wim and Joseph? Is that these are complementary, or are they competing in a way?
No, they are complementary, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Joseph, you have a different view? Yeah. Go. Just.
Yeah, I think at least right now I was thinking maybe the at least for R2, I was thinking this is the way for whatever configurations we give, and maybe when approach that John you mentioned. So if it is getting injected into every package, for example, from the service level, if it's getting injected into the packages, maybe that is also another approach I think we can look at.
I would say there's even a fourth approach that we haven't really discussed, but could be useful. I'm just putting it out there as an option, that rather than, so all these approaches have to an extent, they're push approaches, pushing the parameters from something that knows the parameters, but there's also pull approaches, right? Having components, they know they need some data and they go somewhere to get the data, right? I'm putting it in very vague on purpose, right? There are many ways we could potentially handle this, right? It could be a dial back approach. It can be happening at the workload cluster through some sort of provider. But I think we should also put that on the table as an option, right?
Yeah, but total is the injection not kind of a pull, because you basically reference, okay, I need this, and then you fetch it, right? Is that, in my view, it's a bit of a pull type of
Well,
thing.
Well, that's philosophical, but yeah, literally for me,
Yeah.
that's a push. Injection is a push
Okay.
because the designer, the day zero designer, knows what the, they're designing, say, a CU, right? So they know that they're putting all these network functions together for a reason. And the reason has to do with these parameters that configure them together. This is like the lower level of network service, right? There's an upper level too, where you have to do day 2 configurations as well, things like slicing, etc. But there might be part of the topology, right? If it's a Tosca CSAR, for example, might have parameters, policies, etc., that apply to all these network functions. So that's literally push, right? Because it comes from a person who actually designed it and knows what they're designing. But some of these parameters might be more abstract, right? You might say, oh, I need these 3 components to share a trunk. The trunk has these requirements, but I don't know, for example, in advance what a certain address would be. So that would be provided later, but it needs to be provided to these 3 network functions, right? And it has to be the same number, right?
So I see that. I totally agree. I think the way we're solving that right now is through specialization. So the IP claim and the VLAN index claim effectively are a pull model. You specify the metadata. I need an IP address on this network. And then as part of the fan out process, some additional context of, say, the location gets injected, push, and then the specializer pulls. It says, hey, okay, now I've got enough information to resolve this IP address, and it pulls it. So you could also shift pulling it all the way to the workload cluster. We haven't solved that. And so that's a separate thing. I think that makes a lot of sense as a whole that we need to fill.
Yeah, I think we all know what they are. I'm just trying to complement the presentation with 2 more.
I appreciate it. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. I think
Okay,
Ravi,
yeah.
you need to look at time.
Yeah,
9 minutes.
time.
Yeah, no, mine is a quick question. So today, so the config graphs, I mean, what we call config graphs, they are committed to, say, for the SMF, we apply that to the regional cluster, right? And that's how the controller picks it up and creates the config map required for the SMF, right?
So what happens basically is we create packages, right? So when you create a package, it's the package name that is uniform, right? And based on that, it knows which the SMF will figure. So the dependency thingy will figure out which packages are involved, and it will fetch all the UPFs that are hydrated or specialized, and they fetch them before the SMF finishes. So that's what happens.
Yeah, no, my question was this today we call this config graphs, the SMF regional UPF edge 2. So that's actually a resource that is committed to the regional cluster. That's where the SMF is. So I'm assuming that's what I understood with what.
But the config CRD is actually, it's a meta CRD that encapsulates. So actually, what is in that CRD is actually the 2 UPF parameters, or the various UPF parameters.
Oh, so it's not as a resource in regional, but it's all in that SMF deployment itself then.
No. Sorry. So there is a config. There's a config CRD, right? So which you see on the right, and that.
Oh, that's there in the regional cluster, right? I should be able to see that in there. Oh, okay, that's what my okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but the data here would be raw bytes. So
okay. That is raw bytes.
The control. Yeah, we'll have to decode inside the control.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so at the moment, I think one of the key observations is that, let's say, IP addresses or dynamic parameters. So here we are talking really mostly about static information, right? So things that is known. Typically, it's known from a high level thing. It's not derived parameters that gets actuated or specialized or whatsoever. I think, Joseph, that's true for the most part, right?
Yeah, true. But like I said, right, so some parameters it's based on location. It depends on whether we do it at the service layer or, yeah, I mean, we'll
Yeah,
have
but
to think
maybe
about
let's
it. Yeah.
focus first on the first, and then we can move to the second, right? Because if it's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
dynamic, you have to do.
Yeah, I think we should.
That it's a different, potentially different.
Yeah, we can start with I mean, static configuration parameters. I mean, we can use this as the requirement, right? The static configurations, which needs to be shared across core and RAN and all that. So that you can take PLMN as an example and then see how that can be done probably. Yeah. Okay. So any other raise hands or?
Because for me, approach 2, what is the difference between 1 somehow? Because my
approach
comment
2
is that
more. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So approach 2, right? Approach 2 is more of using the dependency.yaml actually. So it's same approach as how we did here. So in the dependency YAML, we create a package specifically only for configuration, which needs to be shared across multiple NFs. So we create a package for configuration. It's not, that package is not meant to be deployed, but it's a configuration package which can be stored in maybe the management cluster or any of the clusters, and then we can refer. I mean, the individual NF packages can refer this using the dependency.yaml. So that's what I was trying to tell with the approach. So that's the common configuration package we create. So which is the package that can be shared. There's only one time the package is created, and then the NFs that are going to need it just refers that using the dependency.yaml. And I think as part of the mutations and generation of the YAML, I think all of this gets generated automatically. I am thinking the existing framework would do that.
Yes.
And we can within the controller we can just refer it as we are doing it for the IP addresses. That's what I was thinking. So there would be no change in the framework, but we achieve the purpose in approach 2. So just wanted to if there is if
John,
this is okay.
John has his hands. John has his hands raised.
We don't have much time. Is there another slide, or are we just discussed?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Is the discussion here, should we do approach 1 or approach 2, or are you saying you're going to use one or the other? What is the context of?
I mean, this is I think for R2 we wanted to fix an approach so that we start writing the code for it. So that's I mean, these two approaches, I would prefer approach 2 is more generic, and you don't I mean, you kind of reuse the existing framework, and you can also share across multiple packages.
Sorry, John, you go first. Yeah, I'll raise my hand. Sorry.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
So approach 2 is basically a variant of your injection, John, right? So it's kind of doing a little bit of it. I think for approach 2, what we need to do, for me, from a design of the CRD, right, is that we need to segment those CRDs then depending on where on the location, right? Otherwise, we distribute all the information everywhere. So I think in approach 2, the design of the CRDs should be in such a way that the content of them should be done based on how you distribute it.
So you mean certain parameters would follow this approach where it needs to be shared, and certain
so let's say PLMN ID we need everywhere, tracking area we only need in AMF and RAN, right? Then you probably would split. You can still put it in the same package, but you would split it into separate CRDs, because otherwise everybody will get all the parameters if you need one of them.
Right, correct. So I think we'd have to split the configurations. Understood, to that level of how much of sharing is required.
So here's the thing that I'm a little concerned about. So part of the goal here, if we look at it like from this package point of view, is that we want to build. The way I think of it is like, if you, I want the package author who knows what's in their package to be able to specify sort of an API or shape of connection point. So they're going to say the binding points, I'm calling them, right? Like they're going to say, I need to know about 3GPP parameters. And they're going to add that binding point that says, I support the standard Nephew API for configuring 3GPP parameters. And I'm going to indicate that by adding a resource to the package with that API that's a binding point. Now, any controller, any service, anything can, because it's a common Nephew 3GPP API, can look at that package and know what to do with it. And so if we wrap these kind of things into a generic opaque blob, we lose that ability for things from the outside to discover the different binding points and shapes of those ways in which they can add things or operate on the package. So I think there may well be a place for that generic wrapping for like vendor specific things. But when we're talking about things that are good, we want to be consumed across multiple independently developed workflows or controllers on top. I want to make sure that we have a way, and that the point of the binding points is that we have a way to sort of publish what the shape of those is. I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding how this fits with that model.
So, John, maybe just to give you a quick response, right? So, approach 2 is what I call a quick and dirty binding point implementation, but it's not the right one, right? So it doesn't keep track. I mean, it basically, so the dependency resource that you put inside of the package describes what you said, right? You basically say within that package, I need this resource. So go to this package and fetch it, right? That's what it does.
Yes, that's what my in-package binding is in package variant. Yeah. Yeah.
But what it does not do, it doesn't. I mean, it keeps. I think in the binding point you have more capabilities to track and stuff like that. So we did a quick and dirty because this was done, let's say, in half a day.
Right.
So it's and it doesn't. For example, what is not there at the moment is it's only from packages. I don't think I fetch from APIs and stuff like that. So this is what I call the quick and dirty fix that we did during R1. But yeah.
Okay.
And the question is whether we.
Yeah, we're kind of out of time, and Bala has a hand, but I think that's probably fine, right? We don't have a lot of time in R2, like we can move forward with that. But I want to make sure we're on a path to getting to where, like, a big part of the goal is making sure we have well-defined APIs that we can rely on, and they sort of, when you build automation, you can't have the APIs changing underneath you, and so we want to make sure that we've got the right structures for that. I think we're out of time. Are there any, Bala, you had your hand up? Are there any other questions beyond that?
No, I think probably in the interest of time.
Maybe we don't have to conclude right now, but sorry, Bala, to interrupt, but maybe think about it, because so this is important for the people for the radio to make progress, right? I have the feeling that we should, my personal view is that we should go towards approach 2 for release 2 with the radio.
I think that's fine from my point of view. Like, we get the binding stuff for until R3.
Yes, correct. So, and then we have to make this more robust and what have you and stuff like that. But that's my feeling, unless people have objection, because otherwise we are blocking some progress. But it means that we have to decouple the CRD somehow a little bit, right?
So, that's where my point was. That was my question, actually. If we go with approach 2, right? If we go with approach 2, and if you want to refine it, change it, things like that, is it going to change the API, user-facing API in any way?
Nope.
Okay, if it is an internal refactor, then probably we should just adopt it for now and then just refactor
it.
There
is no change in the framework at all, right? right, Wim? There's no change.
No, but also going forward, let's say API changes. For me, the fact that I split the APIs or the CRDs, because see, we have a mechanism like a meta plugin framework that basically encapsulates stuff, right? So that will not change in my view, because we agreed that this was the way forward. We even did more with the recent changes that we did, right? So I don't think we are going to change that. What we still have to do, or I mean, whether you do the binding approach that John was referring to, I think it's always good practice to basically architect a CRD for the purpose that it's used for, and for the people and the roles and the responsibilities, right? So that is, I mean, a generic thing that we have to adopt. So as a result, so that's anyhow going to be important.
That would be necessary with my proposal too, right?
Correct. So no matter what you do, I think that's good practice in general for CRDs. And so that's basically what we are saying, right? So what it means, I think from high level, what it means, just to summarize, we will have a package with 3GPP parameters that live somewhere, right? And then we have each of these individual packages for NFs refer to it through, let's say, a dependency CR that we added in R1, right? So we are using that. And then it will say, for these parameters, I fetch here. For this parameter, I fetch here. So you can basically be flexible. But it's kind of I call it a poor man's version of the binding capabilities that John has in mind to solve this properly. So it's a poor man's thingy here, right? So that's kind of what we are. From a framework, maybe we should, Joseph, I don't know, maybe we should capture that a little bit in the slides, how this would work for R2, because that would help clarify this for a lot of people.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll put approach 2 in more detail. Yeah, maybe to explain it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you both. Let's move on. Victor.
Yeah, one final question there. With that, Joseph, do you think if we take the approach 2, we can make the end of the month thing that we discussed yesterday?
Yeah, I think we can try to do that. Yeah, considering there's no change from the Nephio's framework point of view.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, cool. Yeah, let's go ahead, John.
Yeah, just one more point. I think the OA repository, I've raised a full request, so I just wanted to know what is the general procedure. I mean, what would be the next step to merge it?
You made a pull request. We just probably didn't see it, right? There's too many.
Yeah, sure.
I looked at it, but yeah, I think Joseph, the API is in, right? So you can take that, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking to put this initial version which you made so that it's there in the history, and then next commit would include the NF deploy version.
Yeah, but we don't necessarily have to adopt or accept every PR. We have to?
No,
we can put it into the same PR, right? So we can extend it.
Yeah, but what I wanted to know, to have that as, I mean, history in the main repo, that initial demo that we did with that, I just want the code to be there so that I can, then we decided to change it to NF deploy. So I would adapt to that. So the next step, the next PR, I would do that.
Okay.
Maybe we can discuss it offline. Not.
Yeah. Let's discuss it offline. Let's move on to the.
So John, one suggestion with, and one request for Victor. Victor, do you think, since we have 20 minutes left, and Gurgley has joined us, and probably he may not be joining us continuously, so in the interest of that, can we discuss the documentation first? So
I think so.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, thank you.
Too late for Gurgley.
Yeah, and then probably, Victor, if the time don't allow, probably we can discuss this on Monday when we meet together.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, please go ahead. John, can you please provide the context of the documentation, and then probably Gurgley, if you can tell us what how you'd like to take it. I mean, what are the plans that you have?
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yeah, we have documentation. It's all GitHub. It's all ad hoc. It's not well organized. There's lots of problems with it. So I very much.
Yes, this is I think what we should fix. The problem is that I do not have too much experience in documentation frameworks except for Sphinx, and I don't think that we would like to use Sphinx here. So what I think we should decide first what kind of framework we would like to use. The cheapest solution would be to use GitHub Pages. I have some experience with that, and that could be like immediately started without any like very heavy learning curve. If you'd like to use something more complex, then we should learn.
So I don't know anything about these things, but like, so why do you think we wouldn't want to use Sphinx? Is it's a commercial product or something? Is that the issue? Or
No, it's not a commercial product. It is more common in the Python-based world. We can use Sphinx, so I can help with that. But the Markdown support for Sphinx is a bit tricky. So you have to use a plugin which converts first the Markdown to RST, and then from RST it can build the HTML pages. And with
Currently, why not MK Docs, like MK Docs with GitHub Pages? It's very basic. So you write in so what we use in Container Lab, basically.
Yeah, that's a good, because I do not know it, but I think that is a better fit.
Because you get the full GitHub thingy. I can share. Okay. Alex has also shared something. But
I'm seeing a bunch of on chat suggesting different tools. So let's take this step by step.
Yes.
The first issue I have. So what are our requirements? Our requirements are, one, we should be able to generate a version of the docs that we can host on a website, and we should be able to have versions that go along with the versions of Nephio. So that's one thing we don't have. Like, we have our tags right now, which is pretty lame. That's some of the requirements from the documentation system. I'm sure there's 100 more, right? Like about who can add things and stuff, but we can probably figure all those out. The thing that I would also like help with from documentation experts is, like, I don't think I think the word I've heard used is the information architecture here. Like the structure of documentation, I think it's something more or less I came up with, and probably not just me, other folks. I think Bala put together a bunch of it, but like it's not done by people who are professional writers who know who are thinking about it from the point of view of what's going to be best for our readers. And
I think that's another thing. But I would to say we have to, and it's called the information architecture. So let's call it that. So we should think about it, like what kind of documents we would like to have, how do we organize the information, and so on and so on. So we should spend some time on that also. I see Victor has hands up.
Yeah. So basically, let me relate with topic. The thing that I was talking about, DVO, is mostly the information that we want to tackle. Maybe you, John, mentioned a little bit about that. I think there are different categories, and I guess we can use different tools for different categories. For example, so for the source code reference, I think that we can use some auto-generation tool, like using to generate the documentation, but maybe for the tutorials, we need like a Markdown or like any different existing tool. So that's why I mentioned multiple times this system, DVO, so which explains how to create like different documentation for different audience. So and the way to structure things are like most different. Like maybe we can use wikis, maybe we can use read the docs or things like that. But I think the important thing is like how to structure things. Like it's not the same audience like for different documentation.
So no, this is a good point. So it's the different audience, but it may also be different authors. And so like we might want to try and use tools. I write in Markdown every day. If I'm writing a tutorial, that would be helpful, right? But if somebody never uses Markdown and they're writing reference, right? Like, I don't know. Like we should think about that. Like, yeah. So this is, this kind of approach, Gergely, would be great. Like, and I guess to be clear, context is, as as a project, or certainly for me as one of the leads, I am completely open to whatever the documentation and tech writer experts recommend. I have no strong opinions because I know at least to some extent what I don't know, and this is an area I don't know, right? So I would love to,
Yes,
to get
yeah,
your
but
yeah.
I think yeah, we should start from some basic requirements. And I think you already mentioned one, which is that we should be able to switch between releases. That's, I think, very important. The other thing, which is, I think it's an implicit requirement, we didn't talk about it, but I think you would like to write documentation in Markdown.
I
Yes.
think that's a
Is
nice
this-
to have for me,
Is
honestly.
this correct?
I don't think it's I don't think that's a hard requirement from my point of view.
No, it's not, but
Nice
it somehow defines the set of tools what can be used to render the documentation to HTML.
Right, but if you were to tell me, oh, you have to write it in this other syntax, and it's going to let us use this tool that's like 10 times better, I have no problem learning a new. Personally, I mean, we can talk to the rest of the community. Personally, I'm not like Markdown is the end all be all of wonderfulness. It's just what we have. And so Google Docs are even better, right? But we have tooling, and like, anyway, I don't care. Markdown's fine. I wouldn't contort. This is the point. I wouldn't contort the selections just to support Markdown.
Okay.
So,
All
so
right. That's
yeah. So I think I know, Gurley, I mean, you were trying to get the toolings that is used in the CNCF. So from the experts there. So I was thinking, this being a very Kubernetes native project, even though it's under LFN, it's not on CNCF. So why don't we provide the same experience to the users as they read the Kubernetes documentation? I mean, obviously you can switch to the versions there. They don't have to log into the GitHub to read the documentation. They can go to something like docs.nefio.org, and then you can choose a version from a drop down, and then we can present all the documentation there. I think that, in my view, from a user experience perspective, it's kind of very similar to what CNCF has and Kubernetes users have, and then it's kind of I find it friendly as well. So how about doing something like that from a requirements perspective?
I think that's a very good idea, and this is what I started to discuss with Chris from CNCF, and then he said that he thinks that the Kubernetes documentation system is not the best within CNCF, so this is why he proposed to have a discussion with the CNCF documentation experts. I really would like to have the discussion, but I wouldn't wait for that for too long.
Okay,
that's another story. I will write just for the others to know and be transparent. I wrote a mail to Chris. I don't know how to pronounce the name. Anauchik, maybe that's the correct one, from CNCF, and asked him to connect us to the documentation experts in CNCF to discuss about how projects are documented in CNCF and what are the best practices. That's what what's happened. I didn't get any answer from Chris yet, but he is a busy guy.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I certainly can put you in touch with the folks from Kubernetes as well, if you're not already in touch with them.
Let's do that. Maybe we can have a discussion separately with the Kubernetes doc team. If you could connect us to there, that would be very nice. Yeah, that's another very good comment from Victor. Is it a requirement for us to have translations?
I think it will be.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think we're there yet, but eventually, yeah. And yes, Alexi, I at this point, this is definitely, I see this within the scope of SIG release. I think Bala just wanted Gergely to come here and kind of like, right, just to keep the SIGs, as my understanding, but this is within the scope of that SIG as far as all of the entire. I guess I see it as this. Maybe this is important. The tooling, the platform, and I would say the information architecture, like what documents we have and why we have them, should probably primarily come out of SIG Release. The content of a lot of those docs is going to be everybody, including us. So we're sort of a customer of that system, and we need to populate it with a bunch of stuff and things like we'll probably want tooling around, given a CRD, can we generate a reference document for it, right? Like Kubernetes does with their API documentation. We might be able to reuse their platform if we're using the same tooling. So in that sense, I would say within the scope of SIG releases, all of this discussion of information architecture, the tooling and everything, but we're a customer of that.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Yeah,
I had another point, although I'm jumping the line, and I'm sorry, Talanvala. LFN might have some tools for which they have already agreements. I know a lot of LFN projects using a specific tool, and they might be able to even help us set the tool up and things of the sort, and even set pipelines or whatever to procure or to create document for that specific tool. So I think it's worth asking them as well. But with that, I'll go back in queue. Thank you.
Yeah, great point, Alexei. Yeah, I mean, I almost forgot about that. Yes, probably great to understand what they have as well. Then also understand the Kubernetes. The one other thing I would think probably what from the requirement perspective says, as John was saying, what documents should be produced, like user guide. So I mean, we have different things now, but we have a plan for developer guide, things like that. So probably that's also one of the parts of the equation. So that is a little bit longer term picture. So John, I was thinking for the R2 time frame, also it's kind of, we need to, if we discuss maybe in our summit next week also, we can discuss for the R2, should we continue with our existing tooling, or should we move to the new tooling and new format, like and then involve Gurgly and team for us there as
I
well.
suspect that given everything we have going on, if we want to make a sort of considered decision about the tooling, we're not going to be able to move in R2 to new tooling. I mean, there is effectively no tooling right now, right? Tooling is tag a GitHub repo.
Yeah.
I don't see us personally, like, I think this is a big choice, and we already have people have put like 6 different ideas in the chat, right? Like, I think it's going to be work to figure this out. So we probably need a little bit more formal, like, definition of our requirements, and then for Gergely and other experts to like look at those and explore the different options that are out there, and then make a choice. So I think that's going to take beyond where we can get in our, I think that's more of an R3 thing, but I would love this to be in our R3 plan, is like a real documentation platform and real documentation information architecture.
Right. So basically we can start discussions, explore tools, ideas right now, but we'll use it for R3. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, what I would suggest is to start documenting the requirements. And I don't know what is your practice for that. Is it the Google Doc or whatever?
Usually when we start, it's a Google Doc, and then maybe we move it to GitHub. But if it's just a working document, I don't think it matters either way. It's like when the decision's made and we define what we want, like, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Gurgly. We'll work with you on that one, and then probably we'll ask LFN one side, and also John is gonna give us some insights into Kubernetes doc team to you, Gurgly. I think probably we'll tackle in both the ways. And thanks for every suggestion, Victor.
Yes.
Alex, another thing. Yeah.
Also, if possible, I would like to propose to create a docs channel in the Nefio Slack.
Absolutely. Cool.
And if possible, I would rather move most of the communication there instead of late evening meetings.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it. And,
Yeah.
and by the way, like if you look at Kubernetes, there's actually a SIG for docs, right? There's a whole SIG for docs. And if, we mature to that level, that would be fine too, right? Like just as a future thought. But right now it's under the auspices of SIG Release.
Thanks. Tal, please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like we've quite exhausted the topic, but just to elaborate on John's point, we also have API documentation. That's another requirement. We have Kubernetes resources that have their own documentation tools, like producing HTML, etc. We have Go code, some of which we do want to be publicly documented, like the SDK code. And Go has its own way to do that, though it's quite automatic and nice. So yeah, we're probably not going to require all API, and we will have gRPC documentation as well, for example, for the status aggregator. So there's a lot of tooling for that. I don't think it needs to be unified in style and content necessarily. That's a big project in itself to do, but it needs to be at least gathered in one place. So that would also be under the purview, I think, of whatever this documentation task force will be doing, right? So point is that users would have one place to go to be able to access all the documentation, even if potentially there will be a little bit of different styles for API docs. I think that's acceptable. Every kind of world has its own style, right? Python documentation has a certain style. Go documentation has a certain style. A lot of decisions to be made over how we want to, what is going to be our baseline. I have quite a bit of experience with this, so I could probably join in also and help with that when the time comes. But agreeing with John too, let's start with the basics and just keep maturing, and as our needs and our users' needs, right, increase. That's it.
Cool. I just created the channel in Slack, so please join there. And I don't know what's the formal way to create the Google Docs. Is it okay if I just create one in my personal Google space, or do you have some other?
We have
we do have a space.
We have a SIG release. I think we can. Yeah, you can create a doc, then we can move it
Please,
there, right?
yeah, please share the link.
Well, moving docs is very painful. Gertrude, if you talk to me directly, I'll create a space for you with permissions.
Thank you.
We can handle that offline. And by the way, would it be a good idea, everybody, to create a task force documentation Slack channel just for people interested in that?
I think
now?
Gertrude just created one.
I just
Oh,
created.
you already did.
It's not a task force, but it's a docs.
Because this less than a task force, I think, Tal, right? It's more of a, this needs to, this can become a SIG probably eventually, maybe.
Maybe we keep growing in
Maybe,
SIGs.
yeah.
I think maybe for now, because creating a new SIG involves voting with the TSC and everything.
Yeah.
No, we're saying like in a year, right? Like.
Yeah. For now, I think it should be a task force under SIG 3, and we'll see what happens.
Sure.
All right.
Then
Awesome.
early rename it to task force. Rename it to task force docs. SIG 3 task force docs or something.
Oh, we can just call it task force. I think we haven't, at least until now, we just put the prefixes, and people know which SIG owns it.
Which SIG is this?
Okay.
Sorry.
So I mean, I think like John said, this is SIG 3 in general, but I wanted the discussion to happen here because this is where we get the most traction in terms of meetings.
We get more attendees here.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're out of time. Victor, we will talk about your stuff, I guess, next week. I do want to, well, you saw, I wanted you to come to this next meeting. We have another meeting for those of us involved in the live workshop. Anybody's welcome to join if they want. It's not on Zoom because I just didn't organize all that, but just ping me on Slack. But really, it's just for the people who are presenting right now, and I'm, so. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you all. Looking forward to seeing most of you next week.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Gaggle. I know
thanks.
it's late
Thank
for
you.
you, and thanks for consideration and joining us here. Really appreciate it. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.